Hey, welcome back. 755 is real. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer for the Athletic. And I'm with my co-host, Eric O'Flaherty, former Braves reliever from the epic Oventbril days. What's up, Eric? How you doing, man?
Waking up. How you doing?
Good. You keeping up with your boy Craig Kimbrell out in LA?
No, I didn't see what he did last night.
He had a good one his next time out. Uh, it's like old home week out there to see him and Freddie like hugging after
Yeah.
the game the other night. He got a save, and him and Freddie were hugging. It's like just so weird to see that still. Um, Before I forget, if you guys are watching us on YouTube, make sure to check out our sponsors in the description. All right. And we appreciate you watching us on the tube. We've got Braves split their opening series, 4 games against the Nats, which is it took them 3 games to get over 500 this year after taking them more than 100 to get over 500 last year. So there's that. Or not the Nats. I'm sorry. They're playing the Nats to get starting tonight. 3-game series starting tonight, Monday at Truist against the Reds. Played the Reds and saw a lot of things. Saw a lot of really good. I think a lot more good things certainly than negatives. I thought, even though that you'd rather win the series, I thought the positives that coming out of that were important positives. Namely, we'll get to this. Kyle Wright was.
Oh yeah.
That to see Matt Olson hit the ground running to get off to a great start. And that's a guy that he told me yesterday, he's traditionally a slow starter. Last year was really his first good start last year with his career year with the A's. And then also to see Charlie Morton out there pitching in game 2 as though he never broke his leg in a World Series. You'd never known he broke his leg and had surgery to repair that splintered fibula because he looked like himself. Here he is 38, 39 years old out there just dealing. So I thought there were a lot of real positives. And the Braves could easily, I know this is not hyperbole or being rose-colored glasses, they easily could have had 3 or 4 more home runs in what would be normal conditions out there. But it was windy and cold for 2 of those games, and that really held some balls in the yard. The ball just wasn't traveling for either team, obviously. It affects both teams the same way, and the Reds could have had a few more homers too. But the Braves hit some bombs. Olson hit 3 to the wall. Riley hit one yesterday for a double.
I thought he got that one.
Yeah. So I thought there were a lot of positives. What'd you think? First of all, Kyle Wright to me was that was the most encouraging thing to me to see.
I don't know if I've seen him throw better, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I know he's had some good games in the postseason and stuff, but he was just going right after guys. No messing around. I don't know what the pitch count was, but he had a really low pitch count through 5 or 6. He got in little trouble his last inning. And overall, though, I mean, that's kind of been my report on him, just looking at him and watching him this whole time, is he's always felt like he's nibbling.
Yeah.
It's kind of like he gives up a little hard contact, and then he starts nibbling on the edges of the zone. His stuff, he might be one of those guys that his stuff's so good, the life on it, the life on his fastball, his breaking ball, that he can afford to catch more plate with his mistakes instead of nibbling and getting himself into trouble where they can look for one pitch. But that, I mean, if he's pitched better than that, it's been a tie. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's throwing the ball much better than that.
Yeah, he's looked as good or better than that for maybe one inning, but never like for a whole. He looks so comfortable and confident out there to me. He looked like
fast.
He looked like a high first-round draft pick that he's supposed to be. That he is, that he's and the ace that they thought he would be by now. So he's still pretty young, man, and people forget, and they've given up on him. If you've given up on him, you gave up too early, because this guy showed that he's still got the stuff to be an ace. And if he pitches like that, he will be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you pitch like that, you can pitch for anybody.
Yeah. He had, it was 6 scoreless innings, 2 hit ball, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. I mean, the walks, that's what you also hated to see in the past. He'd get a bad inning, things would start to get a little traffic on the bases, and it would kind of come apart. And he'd walk like 3 straight guys, or give up, leave one right over the middle of the plate and give up a big home run after a couple of walks. You didn't see any of that in this game.
I used to always tell young guys that. I'd say, just watch BP. And in Seattle, we had this guy, Tommy Cruz, that played for a long time and wrecked his shoulder, and he had the most jacked up throwing motion of all time. But I tell him, just watch BP, and you'd see Beltre go up, and this is an old man throwing him 55 miles an hour right down the middle, pops it up. He knows fastball's coming.
Yeah.
And I tell guys, just watch BP. Or we go to Atlanta, and Chino Cadahia would just be dicing guys up. It's ground ball to shortstop, and we'd roll through an inning in our head, and we'd watch the balls get hit. So the first ball gets hit, we're like, all right, that's a base hit, runner on first. Next ball smoked. All right, that's another one, first and second. What do you know? Next thing, this is a 55-year-old man just throwing dead fish down the middle. Ground ball to shortstop. So now we're like, all right, you got a runner on third and 2 outs, and the guy flies out to the warning track. And the only thing these pitching coaches are doing is throwing strikes. And,
right.
The point of the lesson was just it's that hard to hit a baseball. And squared up. You got 8 fielders out there. 9 counting yourself. You can get through an inning just throwing strikes. But if you watch a bad inning, almost every time a pitcher has a bad inning, he walks a few guys and then gives up that big knock that wouldn't have hurt him if nobody was on.
Yeah. So to me, the 2 most encouraging, 3 if you count Charlie, 3 most encouraging developments were Olson, Kyle Wright, and Charlie. The most eye-popping performance, I thought, was Spencer Strider on opening day, dude. That guy comes in. Here's a guy he started, you got to remember, last year at this time, he was pitching in low A in his first pro season. Got promoted 4 times in 1 year. Made his debut the last weekend of the regular season with the Braves. So he pitched a couple of games there. That's it until opening day. He makes the opening day roster as a versatile reliever, 6 starter candidate. He goes in there in a 7th and 8th inning and blows away Reds hitters. He faced 6 batters, struck out 5 of them, was throwing 99, 100 miles an hour like most guys are throwing 93, 94 these days. I mean, This guy throws gas and makes it look easy. And he's about 6 feet tall, maybe 185 pounds.
Sometimes not being tall helps. I think that's one thing that works for Kimbrel is that plane on his fastball. But because they're, throwing from that lower arm slot, but still being able to throw over the top, you can get that almost uphill ride to it. But yeah, when I was watching him, I always try to gauge, you gauge by the swings, and that was not a boring 99. That was getting on guys and getting past them. And I saw a few Reds hitters almost vent their frustration because he has that little follow through.
Yeah.
Like he's got some attitude with his 99. Yeah. And I could tell they were looking for it. They wanted to hit it. They wanted to make him pay, and there was nothing they could do about it. He was just blowing them away.
It's really going to be interesting to see after a couple of weeks, after he makes like 3 or 4 appearances and some teams have some video on him, that kind of thing. It's really going to going to be interesting to watch how teams can, if they can try to figure him out or what, because his stuff is, he just obliterated hitters.
Yeah.
And if he pitches like that, he ain't going anywhere on May 2nd when the rosters are trimmed from 28 to 26, because they can use that arm in the pen. Absolutely, for sure. This is like, Tomlin on, I don't want to say on steroids because people take it the wrong way. This is like Tomlin with another 15 miles an hour, what this guy could do for you, in long relief or versatile. Because he could set up. He could obviously, even as emergency closer, although they're not going to need a closer because they got so many guys that can do that with experience. But the point is, this guy's stretched out right now, and he can do a lot of things for you. He could and do that 6 starter thing too, along with Tucker Davidson.
It'd be a tough decision to make though, because if he can throw, if he can start and do that,
right,
you might want to say, maybe you go down and we get you stretched out, and you're going to be our 6th guy or 5th guy, or shit. If you throw like that, 3rd or 4th by the end of the year, but
and keep working on his pitches and get pitching every 5th day in AAA. You're saying?
Well, if they just don't feel like they can keep him ready to make that emergency starter, don't want to risk it, because bullpen's not an easy role, especially throwing 100 miles an hour. You're hot today, you don't pitch, then you throw tomorrow. I don't know what kind of routine he's got or what kind of guy he is or how he bounces back and handles it, but sometimes a guy shows so much value in the pen that they want to see him for 5 or 6.
Right. Well, it's going to be interesting, but that was really something to see. That was impressive. And that was probably the most impressive as far as power arm that I've seen until we saw Hunter Green yesterday with the Reds.
Yeah.
That guy, you talk about future ace. What a stud, man. 22 years old with the Reds. This guy was number 5 overall pick or higher than that? I don't even know. I forget. Out of Notre Dame High and Sherman Oaks. And you heard about him. You heard about him last year a lot. And we saw it. And he lived up to the hype. It's not just hype with this guy. It's the real deal. 6'5", looked like he had pitched, looked like a 5-year veteran out there. Totally calm. It's his major league debut, and he comes out throwing gas. Plus, he's got a slider and a changeup. And he's going 101, and then he's throwing 85, 86. Like a couple of batters, like I think it was a Duvall earlier, he threw nothing but 3 pitches, 85, 86. It was either a change or a slider. And I mean, he had guys guessing all the time, and they're sitting on that 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and he comes with a good slider and a changeup as well. Whew, that guy, he's the real deal.
Shit, I'd be calm if I threw 102 too.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the tools, you just got to pitch.
He had a pitch clocked in AAA at 104.3 miles an hour. There's only been like 5 major league pitchers ever get to 104. You got to wonder about the gun. Is it real? Whatever. Because that just seems 104. My God. But he did. I mean, that was his first inning at AAA, but he also gave up 3 home runs in that same inning. So yesterday, he did not look like a guy that's going to give up 3 homers in an inning. Although Olson got to him and Darno got to him as the game went on, third time through that order.
That ball Olson hit,
yeah.
I mean, it just didn't make sense. Because it was boring in on his hands, I mean, it had an angle in onto his hands, and he stayed inside it at 100-something miles an hour and hit it out, tailing away from the center fielder to left center. I mean, that's one of the most impressive home runs I've seen.
Dude, that guy, he's got the leverage and the strength because he's 6'4", he's 6'5", long arm, long leg, and he holds his hands way out here. Like Kevin Seitzer's telling me, he's never seen a good hitter start with his hands out there, but it works for him because he does it for mental reminders that work, on keeping his hands out. But then by the time the pitch is coming, he's in the right position. And man, he's got some quick hands, dude. He's got some bat speed for a big dude, especially.
He really does. I mean, the fact that he can get to the high fastball, that's usually, lefty hitters are typically, they're going to hit the low fastball really well. Yeah. They're used to the ball coming from a righty, so they handle breaking balls decently. But most of them have that hole at the top of the zone. And you can tell. I mean, that's where everybody's trying to expose him.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to pitch him at the top of the zone, challenge him with fastballs and get him to chase up. But once in a while they make a mistake and it's middle up and not all the way up, and he just blasts it. I saw him do it in spring training too. Yeah,
he doesn't miss many mistake pitches. He
doesn't.
He's smart. He works pitchers. He works walks. He started taking 3 walks, as many walks as strikeouts.
Yeah.
The Braves got a special one, him, man. He's going to make people forget Freddie, I think. And that's not a knock on Freddie, because that doesn't make his performance any less phenomenal than he was for the Braves. But this guy, you're not losing anything offensively for where this guy is in his career right now, entering the peak of his career. Braves got him at the right time. And then we've already seen the defense. I mean, he's perfect over there defensively.
He's picking a lot.
He's catching balls in the sun like it's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
There's not an adventure. He's perfectly positioned on everything. He's picking balls off, hot ground, one-hoppers, throws. He's a pretty special player. It's pretty, and he's fit seamlessly into the clubhouse too. So
yeah. I mean, he definitely softens that blow. If not, makes you completely forget. I mean, he's definitely a stud. Just watching him pick balls at first has been. We've talked about how important that is for fielders' confidence.
But getting back to Hunter Green yesterday, the Braves got to him a little bit later as it went on. So that's afterwards. Dickerson told me special arm. I mean, they were calling it electric arm, but he said hopefully we see him again, because they think when the second time they've seen him, they think they'll be able to slow the game down a little bit against him now that they've seen his arm, know what he's about, and all that, and shorten up. He said maybe some guys can shorten up against him next time. Because they didn't really know. I mean, all you've seen is video, and like Snit said, it's one thing to see it on video. It's another to see an arm like that and 100 and 101 on you. So I thought their bats were a lot better as they went along. And early on, he was just blowing guys away in the first couple innings. They had no hope.
Well, it's hard to get ready for 101 in April,
Like Strider, like Spencer Strider,
yeah. So that's something to keep an eye on. I think that's seeing them again type of thing. I think that's kind of what Ian Anderson's going through. Because I think you almost get, when you throw as funky as he does and you got that changeup, you almost get a free year where everybody's got to see you and feel you out. And now everybody's seen him. I've just noticed, in his starts, people are taking a little bit tougher pitches when he's not quite locked in. And I think that's why he's either locked in and nobody's hitting him, or it's a more of a sloppy start like that last one he had with a bunch of walks. But I'm sure he'll figure it out. But yeah, it's definitely a big deal to see somebody multiple times.
Yeah, and they were usually he can get guys out 2 strikes, so that changeup, and they're not biting, and they're like,
Yeah.
people have seen him now a little bit, and
Yeah.
and his velocity isn't quite what it normally is. He's a guy that I think right now the pitchers generally are ahead of the hitters. We're seeing a lot of big strikeouts and all that, but he's not, because he only pitched 8 innings in spring training, man. He had 1 start pushed back a day. Then he got it shortened by the blister on his toe. That was his last start, where he would have gone like a couple more innings against Tampa, and he was actually throwing well. And then he got rocked, and the first 2 starts were both against the Red Sox, and one of them was terrible. So he got out of there early too. So I just think he had a real funky short spring, and his velo's not, he's not a big velo guy anyway, but it's down a couple of miles per hour. He's around 92, 93 right now. So it's not been much of a differential between the changeup at all, like 5-6 miles an hour instead of the 10, 12.
Didn't he say last year though he was a slow starter after those
Yep.
bad starts? Just kind of shrugged it off.
Yeah,
I think I remember talking about that.
Yeah, I'm not worried about him at all. That's the thing is I think the positives are a lot stronger than the negatives are negative, because you don't have to worry about Anderson. I mean, look what he's done late in the seasons and in the postseasons year after year. And he pitched into November last year. He had the shoulder thing right after the All-Star break. This is a guy, and when he debuted the year before, it was in August. So again, he's never pitched in the start of a major league season and done real well. So that I'm not worried about him. We've seen enough of him to know what he can do. And I'm obviously not worried about Max Fried. Not that he had a bad start at all, but opening day, it wasn't a great start by him, but we're obviously not worried about him. And at the same time, Charlie's the guy that you wondered how he'd come back from the broken leg at age 38. He was terrific. And then you wonder about Kyle Wright as your 4th starter, actually pitched in game 3. And you wonder, has he turned a corner in his career? Well, we'll see, but it sure looked like it. Between the World Series game and that game, he may have turned a corner in his career. And if he did, look out, man, because this is a guy that you'll be able to count on.
Yeah, a guy with Kyle Wright with confidence is scary.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what, when I watched him in the past, I felt like he lacked the confidence to trust his stuff and go after guys, but he did not lack it last week. I mean, he was just going right after dudes. I should have looked it up, but there was some kind of stat like, he threw like 84% strikes or something crazy, which you don't see guys do that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Like yesterday, Ian was around 50%, I mean, he just did not.
It's hard to pitch like that.
Yeah. And Kyle was ahead of everybody just about. I mean, he pitched pretty much a perfect game as far as what the Braves wanted to see from him. Exactly what they wanted to see from him. Throwing with confidence, throwing strikes, getting ahead, putting guys away when he did get ahead. So it was impressive.
Yeah. He threw 20 total balls in 6 innings, 76 pitches, 56 strikes. That's solid.
So he was very good. And as far as the other positive, we mentioned Matt Olson. He's tied for the major league hits lead right now with 8. All 8 of those have been in the last 3 games. He's got 3 straight multi-hit games, 2 3-hit games. He could have a chance tonight to tie a career high if he gets a 4th straight multi-hit game. So that's a good way to start your career with the Braves. He's hitting 571, 657 OBP. He's got as many walks as strikeouts, like I said, 3 of it. He's got 3 extra base hits, two doubles. Could have had 3 homers if the ball's carrying. He's slugging 929. So here's what Seitzer, I asked Seitz about Olson, and he said, it's been phenomenal. I mean, I asked about working with Olson the first 3 or 4 weeks he's had with him. He said he's been phenomenal. I mean, he's just really impressed me all the way around, mentally, emotionally, with his routine, his batting practice, his plan of attack when he gets in the box. He says, I can see why he's had success. He's got a real great routine in the cage.
Yeah.
And I asked him about his hands and, being out there. He said, I told the other guys, our coaches especially, I said, I've never seen a good hitter start like that, but he gets into a good position. And he said he started doing it a long time ago because he had a tendency to wrap, to get his hands too far behind him and wrap around the ball. So he felt like when he started getting them out there, he was able to get a more consistent launch position. It's like, hey, whatever works. The dude's had a lot of success, and having success in that ballpark in Oakland, where he came from, is saying a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's why Seitzer's a good coach, because a lot of coaches will see something like that and not really put the thought into it. Exactly. They'll stop at, I've never seen a good hitter do it. So as soon as he struggles, they're just waiting for him to talk to him. And then it's like, I know what the problem is. Let's get your
Right.
hands here. But him having a legit reason for it, getting too wrapped in the back and you'd think having his hands out there would make his swings too long.
Right.
But he's able to, if you watch him, he pulls them in tight and then he gets out front in a hurry, because he's got some bat speed. But coaches want to change that type of stuff just because they don't like it. And it's not, it's probably not something you teach, but him having a reason for it and something else that he has a tendency to do wrong that it corrects is, it's well thought out. So I love that Seitzer just doesn't try to paint everybody with the same brush. He lets guys be themselves.
And I think that's something that Seitzer separates him from most hitting coaches, because hitting coaches is so trendy. You'll have a guy that's the hottest hitting coach for 3 or 4 years, and it's swinging down. Then it's launch angle. This guy's hottest hitting coach for 3 or 4 years, but none of them ever last for a real long time with one team for the most part. There's a few exceptions, but Seitzer's different. And I think a huge part of that is that he doesn't get guys and try to change them and conform to a style. He teaches to their strengths. And if he gets a good hitter, he doesn't have the ego that says, I can make him better by changing this or that. He coaches to the guy's strengths. And if you look at the Braves, they've had so many guys with different approaches. Like he gets Josh Donaldson in with a very different approach, but he didn't try to change it. Freddie Freeman, he didn't try to fix Freddie because he didn't need fixing, when Seitz came over here to the Braves. So I really like that about him. And most hitters say the same thing. That's why you don't very generally get guys saying anything negative about Seitzer, which you do get guys usually criticizing a hitting coach if his approach doesn't fit their desired approach. So he's kind of different in that way.
Yeah, and he's not super hands-on either. He lets guys do their work. And, there's nothing worse than going through your motion or working on your mechanics or something, and you feel this coach watching, and you almost just have this tendency to want to please them and do stuff their way.
Yeah.
And then you're out there in the game and you're trying to do it a way that's not comfortable. And, it's like, oh, there's an adjustment period. We got to work on this. We got to make these changes. And he just seems to just let a guy come in, have whatever traits they have, focus on their strengths. And if they struggle, tell him what he thinks. But I think the big key is the ego, not having an ego where he's got to put a stamp on everybody, because that's where a lot of coaches falter.
Yeah. And he also will delegate. He's got a couple of assistant coaches, hitting coach. Last year he had 3, including Chipper. And some guys connect better with other guys, with some hitters than other guys. And he's smart enough to not try to be the key guy with every hitter. Like if Bobby Magallanes, I always pronounce his name wrong, but if he has worked well with a guy in minor leagues, because Magallanes, guys love Mags down in the minors, he lets him work with a guy like Austin Riley, you know, and because Austin Riley's other guy is not with Brumley's not with the organization anymore, but he doesn't mind that Austin still texts with Brumley or gets tips from him. He just wants the hitter to be good. He doesn't want the hitter to have his stamp on it. And as a result, he's been the hitting coach for the Braves for, going on a decade now, close to it. So, So, they got a good one with him. And as long as he wants that job, I think he'll have it. So, because he's figured it out. And most hitting coaches just have too much of an ego and can't let a good hitter be a good hitter without having their stamp of approval. So, you had
real quick, can I slide in here, DOB?
Oh yeah, man. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I feel like I do like the Chris Collinsworth virtual slide every time. So I'm glad that we're able to get the ad.
I didn't know I was supposed to have it today. So
no, you're good. Just real quick.
Let me just ask you: has intimacy arrived? Is that what we're talking about?
Do not cross the threads here. You're gonna cross the streams like in Ghostbuster. No, we have the superb Omaha Steaks, and they are hooking us up this baseball
they did
season
hook me up
with some excellent deals. They hooked David up before today's show. If you go to omahasteaks.com and use our promo code 755REAL, so the number 755 and then REAL, you put that in their search bar at the top of their website, you get 50% off of your order plus 12 free steak burgers. The steak burgers are fantastic, but Omaha Steaks isn't just limited to those steak burgers. They have premium cuts of meat, including steak, chicken, pork, turkey, and seafood. There's also plenty of hors d'oeuvres for parties
and hot dogs.
And hot dogs. And the hors d'oeuvres is just like a pretentious way of me saying starters and appetizers. They have this salami platter that I saw online that looks really, really good.
They hooked up Eric's neighbor, man.
Yeah, Eric's neighbor loves it.
His old neighbor in Seattle, they hooked him up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they sent it to my old house.
So we got rave reviews from Eric's neighbor. We have rave reviews from David. I will say
Yeah.
that I've had their ribeyes in the past. I love the flavor. The fat can render quickly too. Just a little salt, a little bit of pepper, let it rest. Medium rare. That stuff is fantastic. And then my dad used to cook their burgers on the grill too, and they are incredibly flavorful as well.
Well,
So
they
you get
put their
those-
steak. They put their steaks seasoning in the box, dude. So if they hooked
Dude.
you up, you would have know that. They hooked me up.
Yeah,
And they
they-
get the seasoning.
Well,
is in the
you have your
box.
freezer full, like pooling over the top with everything they've sent you. I mean, they've been super generous. They've been
Yeah,
super
I sent them a
generous with what
big
they've
check for all that.
sent. And listen, speaking of checks, if you aren't satisfied with the quality of the food or if it doesn't meet your expectations, you get a 100% unconditional money back guarantee. You have nothing to lose with this deal with a company that's been around for over 100 years. It's a fifth generation operated company. They have great value. And again, if you go to omahasteaks.com and use our promo code 755REAL, again, at the top of their website in the search bar, you get 50% off your order plus 12 burgers for free.
That's
Do not
awesome.
miss out on this deal.
You know how the only way that Omaha Steaks could be better
There's no way it can be better. Don't
Yeah,
ruin this
no.
for us.
is if Omaha was in Kansas. That's the only way it could be
Ooh,
better.
rock chalk. That'd been nice to have right after the national championship game, a cigar and a steak and some nice whiskey. That'd been great.
It was great.
It's still great, but Omaha would have made it even better. You're right.
No, I had my Omaha Steaks then.
Oh, did you really?
I did.
Oh, you
They
lucky
hooked me
dog.
up. Yeah. All right. Is that it? Intimacy has not arrived. Okay. All right. We're ready to go on. Yeah. So I asked Sites about Olson having leverage and strength, with the long arms and being a big dude with some strength. And he said, yes, he does. It looks like a longer swing, but then you'll see, like in spring training, he had a 3-0 fastball. He was late on. He came right back with it.
Mm-hmm.
Fixing my quote here from my story. He said it was a guy that was throwing pretty hard and he parked it right center. I mean, it was like snapping his hands. So it's pretty cool to watch. He said, I'm looking forward to when he starts getting it going, gets hot, settles in here, gets comfortable. Our whole offense, I'm looking for. Well, this was after day one. So they got hot and he got hot in a hurry. So but yeah, he mentioned what you said though about snapping those hands, even though he looks like he's got a long swing. He gets away with that with those hands that he has and getting them back in.
Yeah, he does. He pulls them through quick. I think he's talking about the same at bat I saw where, you just see a guy with his hands like that and you think there's no way he's getting to a high fastball because you're just looking at how far his hands have to travel. But it's almost like as soon as the pitch comes, he gets straight to his load. And, I hadn't heard that quote, but it makes perfect sense. That was, that's something a lot of hitters do wrong is just get too long in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can't get to pitches. And you're thinking a guy with his hands out there so far from him, his hands have to travel so far just to get into position to hit.
Right.
But he times it up well. And then when he goes to swing, I mean, it's not a long swing. It looks like it because of where his hands start, but it's quick and compact, and he's got a lot of juice out front.
By the way, Sites had a great quote on Spencer Strider. I asked him, this was the day after that 2-inning relief appearance on opening day. I asked him I said, what about the kid last night? I said, hitting 100 again and again. And he said, holy shit, that's some power stuff right there.
Yeah.
Strider he faced 6 batters, by the way, threw 16 strikes and 24 pitches, 18 fastballs, averaged 99.3 miles an hour, topped out at 100.3. So that fastball is just 99, 100 every time. Said he got 9 misses on 13 swings.
It's stupid.
Yeah. Only one reliever has more strikeouts in the majors right now than Strider, by the way. That's his teammate, Colin McHugh. I thought that was another real encouraging sign. McHugh had a kind of a rough first outing. I mean, it was, real brief, but he gave up a couple of hits. He bounced back yesterday, makes his second appearance, retires all 7 batters he faced, including 5 strikeouts. If you saw this guy walking down the street, you would never think he was a major league pitcher, much less that he was a strikeout pitcher. Dude, he's about 5'10" and probably weighs 165, 70 pounds. I mean, if I'm exaggerating, it's not much. He's a slender dude. And then he gets out there and just God, he's got some stuff to strike guys out.
He can, that's one of the nice things when you're a starter and you go to the bullpen. I always thought is starters tend to have more pitches. Most relievers, they got a fastball slider and some bush changeup they mix in. But,
Yeah.
McHugh knows how to spin the ball, and he's known how to get through 5, 6, 7 innings in the past. So he's got a nasty curveball, slider. I think he's mixing in a cutter. He knows how to place his fastball, changeup. It's like, you're biting off a lot when you come, because a starter normally has to save a pitch or two. They're gonna work their fastballs, curveball early, and then try to mix the slider in later. He can come in now and throw everything he's got in one inning. So it's a lot for hitters to look for. And I mean, I think you saw the result with 5 punch outs in what inning and 2/3 or 2 innings.
Yeah, he had 2 and a third yesterday.
2 and a third,
first
5 strikeouts. Yeah, I mean
7 batters.
That's overwhelming them.
Retired all 7 of them. He's got 6 strikeouts with no walks in 2 2/3 innings and 2 appearances.
Yeah, he knows how to pitch.
And that's what he did last year when he had that 1.55 ERA and 64 innings and more than a strikeout an inning.
Yeah.
Other big encouraging, Austin Riley. I mean, I think he answered any kind of skeptics last year because he just kept doing it month after month after he caught fire midway through the first month of the season and never really cooled down for more than a couple of weeks the rest of the year. Had the first team all MLB season, only guy on the team that made first team all MLB. And he's picked up right where he left off. I mean, he comes out, he's gone 5 for 13 with a double and a homer. Had that homer hit just below the top of the wall, hit another ball that should have been out under normal conditions there at Truist. And I think what really is another sign of how far he's come since his first couple of years, he struck out once in a 4-game series and had 3 walks, man. 1 strikeout.
Yeah.
He's hitting 385 with a 529 OBP after 4 games.
After I saw him on MLB Network talking about his swing and talking about, what it's the same thing you do as a pitcher is you learn to correct your misses in a hurry. I mean, that's what big leaguers are good at. And, in the minor leagues, maybe guys can't execute that slider and he gets away with being bad longer because they keep making mistakes. You get up to the majors and you face guys that can throw that slider down the way over and over and over. And with him, it's not an approach thing. He knows that's how they're going to try to get him out, but he would have a flaw in his swing that didn't allow him to attack the pitch that he was looking for. Because I think he's a pretty smart hitter as far as what he's looking for. But when he was on MLB Network talking about, how he lands and if he's late on this pitch and he's fouling it off, that tells him he was a little bit, off balance. He was a little out front, a little bit this. Just the way that I saw him thinking through his swing and his misses, it was something you'd hear a guy, that had 10 years in the majors talking about. He's learning his lessons a lot faster than a lot of hitters. Just based on the stuff that he was saying. So, I mean, I'm sure you have one good year and everybody's going to doubt you and think you have to back it up. But it was pretty convincing last year, what he did in the postseason. And then just starting off this year, he looks like the same guy. I don't worry about him anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because you just see him and you hear his interviews and, he comes across as, just a baseball player that doesn't, not a real big thinking guy or whatever, but that's wrong because he is kind of like Chipper. The perception of Chipper in his first maybe 10 years of his career was, this cocky dude, maybe not the brightest bulb, but Chipper is as smart as any baseball player I've ever talked to about the game of baseball. I mean,
he's smartest for me.
Yeah, I mean, me too. He knows the game inside and out. And you could tell that Austin Riley, kind of similar tone, similar vein. You could tell he's listened to all the guys. He's had some really good hitting coaches that have helped him. Chipper, Brumley, especially Bobby Maggs, and he's listened to all that these guys have taught him, and he's applying it. And it's not crowding his brain either. He's not getting up there overthinking it. He's just taking the best parts that work for him, and as a result, he's got this great approach, and he's just now. And he's able to fix it too. He's got some things that he can go to, some cues that he can go to fix it if he gets in a bad game or two. So his slumps don't extend, and that's really a key for a lot of these hitters is not allowing them slumps to swallow you and get you all frustrated. He's able to snap out of it if he has a bad couple of games. Well,
that's that ability to adjust, and to go back, look at some video, analyze what you're doing. For him, it was something he kept talking about with his weight shift. If his stride was too long, his swing got too long, he got his head was moving too much. He wouldn't track the ball as well. And he'd pop up the pitches he was supposed to be hitting. So he would shorten his stride on purpose and he'd be quicker and more balanced to the ball and he'd rake it. But, I guess it's just for me, I hadn't heard him talk in depth about hitting before, but
Mhm.
that's what sells you on certain guys as a teammate. I saw a Juan Soto interview that, is not good news for anyone in the league, the way he's thinking back there when he was talking about pitchers. But anybody that, you get to hear talk in depth
Yeah.
about hitting,
Yeah.
and they're well ahead of the game, because there's some guys, there are legit guys that are just seeing the ball and hitting the ball, and that's as deep as they want to take it. And the more they think, the worse they get. But there's other guys like Riley that are able to really analyze it and break it down. And that's the difference in, having a 10-year career versus 2 hot years, is the
Mhm.
guys that can nip those slumps in the bud real quick, and shorten those slumps. Maybe it's a game or two instead of 3 or 4 weeks. And it seems like he's done a pretty good job of that so far.
His pitch recognition, I mean, he looked
Yeah.
hopeless in his first year after that blazing start, and then guys got a book on him, started exposing him and throwing him sliders away, and he just looked lost up there. His pitch recognition has come so far now, and he's
Yeah.
able to spit on those balls. He's able to tell the strikes to balls, as Kevin Seitzer calls them. He's able to recognize them now, and it's made all the difference in the world. You don't see him chasing a lot of pitches now out of the zone or getting put away on 2-strike sliders, foot off the plate. So Dansby at times has come a long ways, but he's lacking what Riley has learned as far as that is concerned. And like Dansby had 4 strikeouts in opening day, and that's kind of the difference in the two hitters. So Riley hadn't had a 4 strikeout game in forever. He hadn't even had more than 2 strikeouts, but a few times since early last season. So Kevin Seitzer said about Riley, he said, I asked him a big key for him and how far he's come, since his first couple of years. And he said, we talked a lot this spring about how one of the biggest components for him was the consistency in his approach and staying up the middle of the field in the right center. He said, not being in the see ball, hit ball mode unless he's hot. And he said, that's when that approach works. He said, but the experience was the biggest thing that I feel made the difference. He said, knowing how pitchers were working him, getting better recognition of secondary stuff that were strike the ball pitches. He said that for him is the big key for how far Riley has come in the last year.
Well, and he's so strong, he can still hit his homers to right center. He can still do damage out that way. So he doesn't have to try to cheat to the fastball in. That's a guy like Miguel Cabrera or something like that can just stay back and flip a slider out to right center. Those guys, man, they can do whatever they want at the dish.
Yeah, like Chipper could.
Yep.
By the way, the Braves drew for the opening series against the Reds, 3 straight sellouts, and then game 4 on Sunday, which in a normal year, even with beautiful weather, Sunday afternoon, especially during the Masters. But after those first 3 games where everybody's like, if they're going to go to a game, it's going to be one of the ring ceremony because they knew that was coming, or game 1 opening day. It's going to be one of those first 3 games, and then it's going to really fall off on Sunday afternoon. It did not fall off. They got 38,000 yesterday, almost 39. So for 4 games, they drew almost 160,000, man. I mean, they finished second in the majors in attendance last year behind the Dodgers, who have a stadium that seats about 15,000 more than the Braves.
700,000.
And a market and a metro area that's about 3 times the size of Atlanta. Braves are off to a hell of a start as far as attendance is concerned. I think they're going to draw really big for this Nats series that starts Monday night too.
Yeah, well, they won the World Series.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why you expect teams to spend and do certain things, because you can just bank it that how many people weren't even baseball fans and their family was watching those games and it made them a fan. Your Braves team going and winning World Series. So I would expect it's like this for a lot of the year, and it's an exciting team too. It's not a boring team.
No, it is a very exciting team, and we haven't. They add Acuna in a couple of weeks, so they get a lot more exciting at that point. So, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, people are down, after you see one guy have a bad outing, Ian Anderson gets knocked out. People forget, though. I mean, it's just so high off the World Series, but they forget how they started last year. And everybody's not going to be ready when the season starts, especially when a pitcher only gets 8 innings in a 3-week spring training. Normally, the starting pitcher gets about 24, 25, or 28 innings in spring training. He got 8. So I'm not really surprised that he's struggling right now, and it might take him 3 or 4 starts to really get his rhythm going.
Yeah, and if he's already typically a slow starter, I mean, even less concerning.
Yeah. I also loved one of the quotes from Charlie Morton, man. Charlie threw 51 strikes and 78 pitches, by the way. The temperature at opening at the first pitch was like 45 degrees. the feels like was in the 30s. The wind was howling, and he's out there on that the leg that's been repaired. He's got all that metal in his leg, rods and screws. He came out throwing 95, 97, dude. The velocity is the same as it ever was. And the nasty breaking ball. The curveball was biting. I mean, it just looked the same. And he had a great quote. He said, I honestly didn't think about the leg. I just think at some point you just got to move on. And honestly, I've rehabbed enough injuries and had enough surgeries in the offseason that it made this offseason like basically just like a rehab.
Normal, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, I mean, I've done it before. I know what to expect from myself. And then his great quote here, he said, and also, I think the stage I'm at in my career where I just think it's about being a pro and being accountable and doing my job. I just didn't think about the leg.
Yeah. I mean,
he's a piece of work, man.
He's at a point too where it's like if a rehab didn't work, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be upset when he goes home. You know, he's been playing a long time. He's talked about being done multiple times and thinking, you know, he's always thinking about whether he wants to keep playing. So sometimes a injury just makes that decision for you. So I don't think there's really any stress involved with it, and he knows how to handle it.
Ask Darno how much it meant to see how much determination and dedication it took for Charlie to be back out there 5 months after breaking his leg in the World Series to go out there and do what he did. And Darno goes, a tremendous amount. He said, I think that the biggest part from it all is the young guys on our staff get to watch him do this. They all get to learn from someone who puts in so much work and so much effort in his craft, tries to be such a perfectionist with how he prepares. I think it benefits not only him, but the whole organization so much. He said, we're so grateful that he's here.
Yeah, you know, you hate doing the stuff too. It gets really redundant, you know, the deeper you get into your career, and there's only certain guys that can just kind of learn to love the grind of it.
Yeah.
I started to hate it. You know, I had this and I started early with the whole old man routine because I had a bad back from the time I was 19. It's like you get to the park at 1:30 and I got my bitch ass back routine to do, right? It's 45 minutes of the same exercises I've been doing for 15 years. And I got to a point where I didn't have that love and that enthusiasm about doing it. It just became kind of a thorn in my side. The guys that can just put that redundant work in, day out, it's so good for the young guys to watch them because the young guys feel that too. They get to the park, they're tired today, they want to just roll out for BP and just, you know, use BP to get loose and swing the bat out there.
Right.
But you learn what you have to do for your body to feel your best. And when you watch a guy that's 37, 38 years old, and you know he's been doing this for, you know, 5 times longer than you, there's really no excuse for you not to do your work and be consistent with your work too. So it's all kind of contagious and flows around the clubhouse when you see guys working hard.
Yeah, that was $20 million spent very well on that extension for the Braves because you're getting you're getting a co-ace and you're getting a guy that sets the ultimate example for all these young pitchers and young players in your organization. So, you know, because I don't think they can watch him and see what he prepares and how he prepares to face a team and what he's been through and not tell themselves if they feel a little sore someday or a little tired and go, oh, come on, man. The guy's out. He's 12 years older than me and he's out here doing this. You know, it's like Verlander with the Astros at 39 doing what he's doing. It's pretty special when you can have a guy like that do it and set an example and just being such a class act generally about not complaining about anything and being all about the team. I mean, that's what you want to see from your bell cow guys, man, setting the tone.
Well, and still dealing and still throwing 96.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like it's really good for guys to look up and see if I want to play a long time, this is what it's going to take and wrap their heads around that and start putting the work in now.
And if they do a little reresearch and some of them are having some injury stuff now, they'll see that Charlie went through all of it when he was their age, you know, and a lot of people had written him off and here he is 15 years later after people wondering if he was ever going to be tough enough to do it. Now he's like the ultimate tough guy. He's like the opposite of what we thought. So,
well, I think that's one of the best things that could have happened to him was getting traded and going somewhere, you know, like what we've talked about before, getting somewhere where he's just going to have that chance to start. I was watching. I thought Newcomb threw the ball pretty well, you know, after bad pitch or two.
After the wild pitch and the hit and the single, the first batter, he was lights out.
Yeah, he strikes me as a guy though, and I keep saying it that. You know, maybe he figures out here, maybe he doesn't, but wherever he goes next, I feel like he's just going to take off and everybody be mad at the Braves for giving up on him or something like
Yeah.
that. But some guys, man, you need a change of scenery and a fresh start. But I didn't think he threw bad. I thought he threw pretty well. Just a couple
I
bad
did too.
pitches.
I did too. And I'm first to hammer him if he pitches poorly. But he actually threw the wild pitch, moved both runners into scoring position, second and third,
Yeah.
and then gives up the 2-run single. But that was a bloop in the right field, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
wasn't even and then after that, he retired the rest of the guys. So yeah, you can't complain about that appearance. If guys do, it's just because they're so negative on Nuke at this point. So, but he actually pitched well. That's what they need from him.
Yeah, that's the hardest part about being in that role is you feel like everybody's expecting you to fail, and you get in that here we go again mindset with people. But yeah,
he's by the way, Charlie is 38 and 150 days. He'll be 39 in November.
Jeez,
isn't that something? Just over 13 years of service time. And Darren O'Day's even older. They got two pitchers. Darren O'Day's even older. Darren O'Day's 39. He looks good, man.
I don't know if it's a genetic thing or hard work or a combination, but some guys, man, it amazes me what Charlie can do and continue to. Yeah, especially, like when you see a guy, and this is another thing, is if you see a guy, like I had Jamie Moyer when I was coming up, but Jamie Moyer was pitching his ass off. He didn't still have the stuff, so he'd be in the pool every day doing his shoulder exercises and all these kind of geriatric workouts, right?
Yeah.
But and you appreciate it when you're a young guy, the consistency and the whole routine. But when you see a guy that's 38 and still throwing 96 and still got his same stuff he had when he was 25, it kind of hits a little different to buy into the routine and what they're selling. But for me, that's the most impressive thing about Charlie. He's almost got better stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was asked about that, having as good a stuff or better than he's ever had now. Paul Byrd asked him about it after the game, and he said, I don't really know exactly, but he said a lot of it was just, learning to pitch and having the body type that he has and figuring things out, along the way, because he's really cleaned up his mechanics over the years to where it's now. He said, my delivery is not perfect, but it's good enough. Well, it's pretty close to perfect for his body type and all that. He's figured it out where it's pretty as close to effortless and being able to throw as hard as he does and still not put max effort on his limbs.
No,
he's worked it out through a lot of trial and tribulation, man. Cleaned it up. And it helps when you can spin the ball unlike anybody else in the majors practically.
Yeah.
I mean, he's up there throwing it over 3,100 RPMs, man.
Yeah.
And that ain't sticky stuff. That's just him doing it.
That's just how his body works.
Yeah, his spin rate didn't go down at all after the new rules went into place last year, because that had nothing to do with how he does it.
Yeah, some guys, man. I mean, that's one thing you don't really ever lose is your ability to spin the ball, because it's more of a visual thing. It's more of a field thing. Most guys just lose their velocity to the point where that spin's just guys can eliminate a pitch and sit and look at it, or wait for it. But him throwing 96. With that much spin on his breaking stuff, I mean, he's as nasty as he's ever been.
Oh, and before we go, just two comments I had on PitchCom, because the Braves aren't using it. A majority of the teams, at least some of the pitchers are using it. Some teams, the whole staff's using it, but some really good teams aren't using it either. The Dodgers say they can use it if they want, but I don't think anybody's using it yet for them. Braves aren't using it. They aren't telling their guys you can't use it. They're not pushing it, and so far nobody's using it. But here's two reasons. If you listen to Charlie, for one thing, he said, he's a guy that's not really at 38 going to jump on board the PitchCom thing. He said, I just think it's the kind of thing that's going to become very prevalent. He understands why it's going to be popular. He said it's only a matter of time. He said it's going to be something that's used by a lot of people and a lot of teams. There's a trust factor there, comfort factor. At some point here in the future, every team is going to be doing something similar. And signs are just going to, he meant fade away. Yeah. He said, but I think right now we're in a transition period where you have some guys that have never even thought about using that technology, coupled with just an era of the game where that's going to happen. But I don't have a strong opinion either way. Travis d'Arnaud, and this is a reason why you might not see the Braves do it for a bit. Travis d'Arnaud, he made a great point. He said, I don't think it's the perfect answer for stop and sign stealing. I think you can still steal from it if you really want to. I think baseball will evolve into someone else into someone else will be calling the signs, and I'm not a fan of that. I think that it's a game of the players. So that's the biggest thing for me. The way I see it evolving is a team, they hire someone who's going to
Yes.
be who's going to calling the whole game, like in the NFL, an offensive coordinator. So yeah, I see the pros and cons. Like if the infielders and outfielders know what's coming, it definitely simplifies a lot of things with runners on second base. I think it's rushing the game, rushing the timeless game. Like he said, for Saturday, for example, it's no one's fault. Everyone's learning how to use it, but you put your 2 feet in the box and you look up and the pitcher's starting his windup, so it's not comfortable. So yeah, everyone's still learning how to use it. We haven't used it, but I see the pros and I see the cons of it. But I thought it was a great point about how you're going to evolve where somebody in the dugout's going to be, some analytics guy's going to be calling every sign. And as a veteran catcher who one of his big strengths is calling the game, and a veteran pitcher like Charlie trusts his catcher and has that relationship with him, you can see where they wouldn't really be like, we need to use this,
Yeah, but this is the thing about pitch calling too, that I don't think that could ever take over, is that the right pitch according to numbers,
right?
It's not always the right pitch according to a pitcher's confidence, how he's throwing it that day. Like, the right pitch for me against Votto might be a slider, but today I might have a horseshit slider.
Yeah.
And or your catcher might see something that tells you he's looking for it, because guys can do whatever they want when they come into the box. I mean, it's baseball is not cut and dry like that, where there's just a right answer for everything that numbers can dictate. And this is the first I've heard a guy suggest that, but I just don't think, or things like Rossi used to call the wrong pitch for me. I'd be facing somebody like Pujols and I'd be pulling off the ball, and Rossi would call a fastball into Pujols, set up in off the plate so I'd throw a ball, but it would get my delivery back in line. He'd get me back to that side of the plate so that when he called the next slider, I wouldn't pull off it and hang it. I'd be on that same line because I just did that. So you just repeat that line with your direction, and then you get a good slider out of a guy. I mean, he did that for me countless times where I would be off. I'd be pulling off the ball. I'd be flying open, kind of like the tendency Max has when he's not locked in. He flies open a little bit and pushes the ball. He'd see that and he'd make a correction to my delivery by calling a certain pitch. And he'd get my front side going straight toward the plate instead of pulling off toward third base. There's no way to analyze that and make that part of the game. And maybe a pitching coach calling it, I could see, especially with the pitch calm and making it easier for a pitching coach to call the game. I don't think players will be happy with that. And I don't think pitching coaches want to do that. But if you have a guy with a computer that just the computer says this is the right pitch, there's so many variables into what's the right pitch right now that I don't think it could ever happen.
Yeah, and I think you're cutting the legs out from under a really cerebral, experienced catcher who's not going to have the option of doing it, because, like you said, he might see the book on this guy might be to throw him this pitch, but that catcher that day might have seen the first couple of bats, see this guy's having trouble with something. Maybe he's sore. Maybe he's just not seeing the ball well this particular day from this pitcher. So the catcher's got to have the freedom to do that and override it at least, So yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the teams, I haven't looked at the teams that are using it and not using it, but I wonder if the teams that aren't are the ones that have the more experienced, cerebral, great game callers, because they would. Because to me, you're negating a team strength if you're just taking the game out of a really experienced catcher who's great at calling a game.
Well, catchers resist a lot of this stuff too. They resist a lot of them don't want the K zone, the automatic umpire, because like Flowers would say, or Darno would say, it's like one of my most valuable strengths is to get a ball called a strike.
Yeah.
And then you take pitch calling out of their hand. It's like you could just throw anybody back there now. You might as well just pick a fast outfielder and tell them to block stuff.
And at the same time, a young catcher, a team might be more eager to use this and open to using it with a young catcher who's not great at calling games yet. It's not assertive and all that. But if you start using it, how's that catcher ever going to develop that? He's never going to learn. You better hope he doesn't go to a team. A team might start looking at that if they're making a trade. And this is and all the teams aren't using PitchCom. They might look at, has this guy been using PitchCom? Does he know how to call a game? How's he going to learn? So it's a lot of interesting variables it's going to bring to the game.
It is. And it's also weird, all this little stuff they're trying to do to speed up the game. I think the focus, if you want to grow the game of baseball, because for me, I watched the Masters seriously for the first time this weekend, and I had the time of my life because I play golf now. I never gave a shit about the Masters because I didn't play golf till I was in my mid-30s.
Right.
I think baseball's focusing so much on, cutting 10 seconds off the game here, trying to speed the pace of the game up with pitch comm and all these little things. It's like, if they really want to grow the game, they got to get kids playing it again.
Yeah, no doubt. Before we wrap it up, I just think it's real simple to shave 10 minutes off a game, and that's by not letting that batter go out of the box every pitch, adjust his things, the Velcro batting gloves, just eliminate that. That's all you need to do.
But I don't think that changes. You're still a 3-hour game or 2-hour and 40-minute game.
But if you can eliminate a lot of seconds on each pitch, if the batter cannot get out of the box every time,
Yeah.
And the 20-second pitch count, I don't have a pitch clock. I don't have a problem with it because they stop it when there's runners on base.
Yeah.
So as long as you're using it with no runners on base, I don't have a problem with using a pitch clock at all.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it would help if the games were faster paced, but I mean, you're competing with instant gratification of Instagram, Twitter, all this stuff. Even if they cut the games to an hour, I don't think that solves much of the problem. I mean, you have to get interest in it. You got to get kids playing it.
Yeah. All right, that's it. We'll be back after a couple of 3 games in this Nat series and do another show and have plenty to talk about. But it's good to be talking about baseball again and not about lockouts and what we're looking forward to. So now they're playing, and I think, like we said, a lot more positives than negatives on the Braves split of the 4-game series with the Reds. And the Reds got some talent, by the way. They're not going to be as bad as a lot of people think. They got some players. And
They're one
can
of
still play.
Those sneaky teams that when their talent does its job, they could come in and beat anybody, and then they're going to go 0 for 7 one week, But yeah, they weren't a bad team, I didn't think.
And Dickerson, and by the way, they started the season with 3 pitchers with 0 service time, and they're going to start a guy on Wednesday.
Yeah,
he'll be the fourth pitcher with 0 service time.
Well, that's hard too, for a team to see all these guys. You see 3 pitchers for the first time.
Yeah. But Votto, by the way, that play he made on Dickerson, everybody was down on Dickerson because, who's Dickerson? And we didn't know his shit last year. This guy
hit some balls hard.
He hit some balls hard and hit into a lot of bad luck. So he had a pretty good series, I thought. That play Votto made, that might have changed the game if he doesn't make that play right there for the 3rd out in that inning. So anyway, all right, 7:55 is real. We're out. Thanks, everybody.